All right, well, thank you everyone for joining me and Josh and Madhav. I'm Scott King over at Christa Software, and we are going to talk with you about Intelligent Security Operations Center automation. Just to give you a little bit idea of what to expect today, we're really just going to define the problem that we're looking to solve, and then talk about what security organizations are doing to try and solve that with some tooling, what the industry analysts say on really our space. So what we're trying to do is take some administrative burdens off of security experts and let them do their job. So let them really focus on what they do best. Threat intelligence, do remediations, and really, the thinking power behind all of the tooling and problems that we see. And then we're going to explain a little bit about the workflow. We'll give you a view into the workflow that will show you in an actual product demonstration. So I'm really looking forward to it. Madhav, you have any opening statements before we get started?
No, this is great, John. Scott, and thank you so much for setting this up. This topic is extremely near and dear to my heart. So looking forward to, talking about a few exciting use cases.
Yeah. So Madhav is our Chief Product Officer and a security veteran. So I hope you have some really difficult questions for him during the session today. But really, what we want to do is define that we have just too much data. So this is a visualization of data that, you can't really tell what it is. So you need some tooling, you need some intelligence from the data. So basically, you need information from it. How do you get information? How do you act on that information? What is your workflow to do that? Who else is involved, right? Because what happens is security organizations, they really just have too much data. So Madhav, I've seen stats on how many alerts, security organizations receive. It depends heavily on your size, but I've seen numbers, even a mid-sized business, 1 million alerts a day. Where do you think the barriers are from number of alerts for, let's say, a mid-sized business?
That's a great point. Anywhere from, so standard business protocol states that it's approximately anywhere from 1 million to 4 million, depending on your size. But even that, organizations have their own sort of kind of filters to filter that. So approximately, you would think anywhere from 40,000 to 60,000 alerts that actually become incidents, believe it or not.
Yeah, and they're probably just learning to maybe ignore some of the alerts, and maybe something gets by. If you just get tired, you get fatigued, something slips by and you're like, well, we have too much to do anyway, right?
That's exactly right.
So to go through this and to look at all the threats, look at the data. This data is from ESG, from John Olczyk. He's an analyst that kind of covers the security space and has recently done a survey. How many security tools do you use, right? So this is an organization. So the demographics is across the board of security organizations, large and small. But Madhav, 40% of them use 10 to 25 different tools. And then 30% of them use more than that 26 to 50. That seems like a lot of tools to me, right? I run marketing ops. I have, a lot of tools. I don't have 25. I can't imagine.
And that this does not even take into account, Scott, remember all the data sources that they have. These are just internal tools.
Right.
Add scores of different data sources that they may have, their own data lakes, external data sources, threat intelligence feeds, etc. Now you really understand the big problem statement that we are kind of taking on, right? So.
Yeah. So and maybe it's a self-imposed constraint. So if the security organizations are constrained, here it says 27% of cybersecurity professionals say that they just have too many alerts. More tools equals more alerts, more work, more problems, right? So this is an interesting way to look at it, that okay, we have so much data, we have so many tools, and we can't really get out from under ourselves, I guess. And then 35% say that one of the biggest challenges is managing all the point tools. So it's just time consuming, right? So I think we're going to talk a little bit later about how to save time and how to really make best use of, let's say we're automating ourselves, right? So people and systems. And then 51% of all of these organizations, just shortage of staff, right? So it's too much on one end and it's not enough on the other. Madhav, where do you think organizations, like where do they focus on this? Any opinions on maybe some of your security peers on how they manage staffing? Because there's always talk on social media about how many cybersecurity jobs there are open, and there's just not enough people to fill them.
That's precisely right. And if you look at any of these problem statements that you're kind of describing here, it all boils down to a single constraint: people, people, people. And there are not enough people to do the jobs, number one. We are also, as technologists or delivery of technology that I've done my entire career, we have failed to deliver a consistent technology that helps people to make those decisions, or to help solve these attack vectors or data Armageddon that you described here. The amount of data that's just being pushed to these users. How do we actually make a streamlined effort of solving that faster, easier, better, right? And we've just consistently failed at that.
Yeah, it's really difficult. Really, in any type of IT role, it's difficult because we're just producing more data. There's more endpoints. The IoT devices are just bleeding data. Wow, that was interesting. So I'll read this quickly because the build went automatically. But really, this is what the analysts say about, just really automating the people and systems. So, Gartner says, we're going to have 69% of what a manager does, it's going to be fully automated. I think that's really, really high to me. And then by a couple of years, organizations will be able to run 25% more autonomously. I think that's actually understated. And then on the right-hand side, these are some sources from Forrester. The sources are at the bottom. If you want the exact links, I can send them to you afterward. But digital workers are going to perform a higher percentage of the work, right? So these are your bots. So these are automated tasks that a human would normally do. It's being replaced by digital labor. So we're going to see the whole digital labor market increase. And then on the bottom, what I thought really interesting, Madhav, was turn employees into creators of automation and have the automation adapt to the employee. It's really interesting because you hear about the democratization of IT or consumerization of IT, which all it means is we're going to give people better tools to perform their jobs. But earlier we talked about the security guys already have too many tools. So it's really the idea of pushing it closer to the edge, to the knowledge worker, right? So any opinions on kind of giving the keys to the kingdom away to knowledge workers on the periphery?
I think this particular statement basically sums up how you want to be able to solve this problem, because the problem is just too big. And until and unless we are allowing the employees or individual contributors, the creators of automation, and have that automation adopt to your workforce, is the single biggest problem, in my opinion, that we have failed to solve. And we'll demonstrate how Christa can actually easily achieve some of that, some of the points that's being made here, right? So that is the key, in my opinion, to solving that problem.
Yeah, it's much better to have the technology adapt to the employee than have the employee adapt to the technology, because that's what we've been doing for decades. And here we are today, we still have a problem. So Madhav, why don't you describe to us a little bit about what intelligent automation is in terms of all the tooling that we have here.
Absolutely. So, this slide basically sums up of the silos that we have built. So hello, everyone. My name is Madhav, as Scott introduced you. I have spent literally my entire career delivering technologies to help these enterprises, protect or respond to those threats, right? We have inundated users with so much technology. Think about it, so much technology that as some of the stats that Scott pointed out earlier, these users are adopting to 25, 40, 50 different tools in order to get their job done. So majority of the time they're spending in copy paste or are trying to get the relevant information from multiple systems rather than actually focusing on doing their job, which is to respond to those threats. And incident management is nothing but that. It's basically allowing, so if I can sum up what incident management is, it's basically taking those threats that are active in your organization and responding to it in a much more streamlined fashion. And we have not given proper tools and systems for our users to be able to do that. We have done a very good job of providing these point solutions. So if you look at the point solutions here, there are collaboration tools, like user collaboration tools like Slack and Teams, et cetera, that have solved, to a great extent, the people collaboration aspect of things. And on the other side of the spectrum, you have all these point solutions like automation platforms, low codes, RPAs, that have done a great job of kind of automating the workflows, but have really not taken user into account here, right? So what Christa is, I mean, if you look at any organization, the most ideal sweet spot is your people and systems. It's not these silos. And Christa does exactly that. Christa is that intelligent platform that orchestrates and manages your automation and your people and deliver a business outcome that these point solutions just can never achieve, in my opinion, right? Why do we say that it's an intelligent automation? Intelligent automation is not just about having these key buzzwords like ML, AI. Yeah, we do that, don't get me wrong. But it's also about achieving a business outcome. An outcome in this case, in this specific topic, would be responding to those threats in a faster, easier, and a much more scaled version. But we know we are failing behind that. We know users are inundated with so much information, so much technology that they're feeling behind. They're not able to collaborate, especially in a global environment when you have teams across different geographical locations, different countries, and you have all of these different tools. How do you collaborate and automate between people and systems? Christa is literally the perfect solution to bring those two aspects together, in my opinion. We'll demonstrate that as well.
Yeah, Madhav, you said something I haven't, you're talking about different teams in different countries and different time zones. There's different laws, compliance laws across different regions. So that's a big reason too, to really maintain this people and systems. Because I can imagine, seeing a threat and then messaging someone on Slack, hey, did you see that threat, right? And they're going to say, which one? It's just a nightmare.
That is exactly right. And that's why Christa is such a unique solution to have that combination of people and systems as well as visibility roles, right? So why Christa, and why is it intelligent platform, and why do you really need it? Let's talk about that for a second, right? So does that mean Christa solved this problem more effectively than any other tools? We would like to think so, but then why? I mean, the natural question is, how do we actually solve those silos between people and systems, right? Why is it automation? Remember one of the statements that Scott made earlier, and the analyst seems to agree, that users needs to create more automation. And it's not just creating those automation in a much more technical way that a lot of these RPAs or other automation platforms make you believe. And then how do you orchestrate the user processes behind that, right? So let's walk through that. So what makes Christa an easier automation platform to use, right? We leverage what we call conversation, really no technology. If you know how to have a conversation with other human being, you already know how to use Krista. Let's take an example, a specific example in this case of a SOC manager, right? So let's say if I'm a SOC manager and I want to basically I have a use case where an alert comes in and I want to be able to solve that alert very easily and effectively and make it automatable. So next time when I see something very similar, it should be fully automated, right? So an alert comes in that there's a guy named Scott King who just logged in to a particular system that he was not authorized to, and we need to understand why. Was it really Scott King or not? Or if it was, then how do we basically make sure that he knows that there's the permissions are not granted, and then take appropriate action. If it was not Scott King and there was a hack, we need to make sure that node is completely taken off the network. That's a very common use case, right? So I get that alert. Now I want to be able to ask the system or to basically find out the information. Was it really Scott who tried to log into that system? So I'm going to go to my IAM system or whatever my SSO might be in security world to find out which person, what IP address actually tried to log into that particular system, right? That's the ask a system step in Christa. Now, let's say I get the information back that it was indeed an external IP, which was not Scott King. Now we need to know, was it a one-time incident or did it happen multiple times? And we need to ask an IT person about like how many of such instances have happened. That's literally just an ask a person step, right? And now every such instance, I want to be able to take those endpoints off my network, as well as make sure that those IP addresses are blocked. That's nothing but a make a decision step in Christa. I have just described a very complicated workflow, which typically a SOC analyst or a SOC manager would require an email, a ticketing system, some sort of a collaboration internal messaging system, Slack, Teams, etc. Log into at least 4 different applications, and probably, if they want to automate something, probably knowledge of some of these APIs to those backend systems to be able to automate that workflow. In Christa, you literally just did that by having a conversation with people and systems. So to be able to create automation so simplistic as these 5 steps that basically makes up the entire automation philosophy in Christa: inform a person, ask a system, make decisions, of course, and then ask Christa if you ever want to use our AI ML engine to be able to take away some of the bottlenecks that of course, with humans involved, you want to be able to take some of that away. We could do that as well. That is the concept that is so brilliant and easy to use, in my opinion, right? So that's why Christa is that intelligent automation, which is so easy for users to really use, where conversation is the automation, right? It is so easier to maintain, where you don't need specific knowledge of APIs or scripting knowledge or programming language to be able to create this automation. You're able to create this automation on the fly. And then on the people side of things, we can orchestrate the entire process so that people get the relevant information, as well as relevant steps that people are involved with, and orchestrate the entire process without having to really have multiple systems involved. Right? That's why Christa is as easy to use as anything else. Competition, any point solutions on automation, you need to know scripting language, you need to know APIs, you need to understand how to make those API calls. And God forbid if those APIs change. Think about it, the change management. So it becomes an SDLC process versus conversations, right?
Interesting. You need to warn me next time, Autumn, if you're going to use me as an example, because I need the
You
little
bet.
cartoon character up there that looks like me instead of somebody that looks like, Susie, Sally, and Joe.
Absolutely.
All right. Love it. Love it. So if Krista is managing all of these workflows, Madhav, what happens with the, I'm assuming that there's a lot of data that is created, what does Krista do with that data?
That's a great question. And this entire slide basically summarizes the compliance and security angle, Scott, that you brought up earlier as well, right? In any cybersecurity SOC operation, there are multiple things that you have to be aware of. Compliance is one of the biggest aspect of that. And of course, access control and visibility rules and enterprise grade security to go along with that. So let's take a use case and an example to further illustrate why Christa has a very amazing solution here as well. So let's say you get an incident. So you're managing a team of SOC. I'm a SOC manager, and I have a team based in US, and I have a team based in India, for example. And basically, of course, follow the sun rule. You have 24-hour coverage, et cetera, et cetera. Now, a particular incident comes in, which basically has, let's say that customer happens to be a healthcare professional or healthcare company. Compliance-wise, any personal record or HIPAA compliance mandates that customers' information cannot be shared across US. So all the personal information about the health has to stay within US boundaries. How do you follow that model now? How do you make sure that your team in India only has relevant information that they can see to resolve that incident without having to ever look at or have access to that patient's personal information? How do you do that without basically having a whole team of people just trying to scrub data to make sure different visibility and access controls? Christa has some of the industry's best built-in enterprise-grade role-based access control at the data level. And I mind you, at the data level, where automatically, based on your role, you can see pieces of information that you're only allowed to see. That is built in. So as you're building out your automation and your workflows, based on your security groups and access control, exactly, so you don't have to change the conversation or have multiple automation scripts to be able to understand who has access to what. And it gets complicated really fast, right? That is just a very simplistic example. In majority of the cases, you even have outsourced SOC 1, SOC 2 type of things where you have your level 1 incidents happening, being outsourced to a MSSP, but anything important or SEV 1, SEV 2 comes to your teams. How do you manage that access control, right? And visibility rules. And then auditing is the other very important part of it. Many a times, let's say you resolved a particular incident and a SOC manager would attest to this, or a CISO would attest to this, they will come back and say, you know what, this particular incident happened about 6 months ago. I need to know all the information about it because of regulatory, and then we have to be able to report on that. That particular thing will require a person to log into at least 8 different systems to 10 different systems to figure out what action they took, how was the incident responded to, all the necessary logs and data, who had access to what, etc. Christa can basically provide that off the shelf for you so that you have end-to-end visibility into exact single action that was taken, right? So having that built-in compliance and audit functionality is so important for you to be able to have an effective SOC and incident response practice as well. Right?
Outstanding. I'll take some. So with that, Madhav, we're going to hand it over to Josh. He's kind of been silent so far. Sorry about that, Josh. But you want to give us an idea of what you're going to show us. And so everyone, Josh Scott is principal solutions architect over here at Christa, and he does a little bit of everything. I hear him working on the product. I hear him helping all types of organizations. So glad to have you, Josh.
Oh, thank you, Scott. Yeah, and I also come from a background in cybersecurity, so I end up knowing this world all too well in terms of the chaos. And building on Madhav's example, we're going to go through a couple of more concrete use cases. First one I'm just going to bring up is to explain in detail what Madhav was just mentioning about the follow the sun and how Krista can help with that specific case. Then we're going to look at the user experience from an analyst perspective, meaning we're going to go through and walk through the interface of Krista as how an analyst might use Krista to help with the orchestration of how an incident response can go. So the first thing to remember, right, an incident when it starts, and we talked about having a team in India, having a team in the US, there's lots of different people involved in that. Sometimes there's different teams, even different departments, for instance, like security or IT. So when that incident launches right now in a normal environment of a typical business, they're trying to scramble to make sure that the handoffs are coordinated. They're going to every system you see here in a lot of cases, because each one of those systems can be important within the context of the incident. It starts usually with looking from the information from a SIM, and then they have to go figure out, well, what other data do we know about this, whether it's an indicator, whether it's a system of asset that's internal, or is it a virus that we have some information on? And they have to figure out, is this something in an internal capacity from their data side, from their IAM, basically their identity and access management. And finally, once they've figured out what's going on with this incident, now they're stuck going and opening tickets and making sure those tickets get routed correctly to the right people so they get fixed in the IT department. So there's a lot of swivel chair. There's a lot of difficulty because the actual overhead in communicating across teams and across time zones is very challenging. So you have team one, let's say in the US, team two in India. Now let's say they need to switch off after their 8-hour shifts are done. The incident's still open. How do they communicate what's been done, what hasn't been done, and what needs to be done next, plus considering what Madhav mentioned with the data and audit trail. And then they finally might have to hand it off to the third team. So all of those things become a chaos recipe. It's meaning that there's very little bit of understanding. Where is this incident? What's going on, and who has control of the remediation? Now, Krista can come in and provide a buffer between all of your systems and the teams. So the individuals running the process in terms of each team, as well as the teams themselves, will all have a place to work from. So team one, in this case, they start this process, and we'll just follow through some of these conceptual steps as they go through and solve the incident. So they're getting the enriched data. Krista can connect with the systems inside of your environments. So when you set up Krista, Krista knows about, hey, you've got this SIM, you've got some of these data sources. We'll use that as a part of the process, such that team one's getting that information already. They don't need to go to every single interface. Or if they do, Krista provides a single place for them to go to interfaces that they may need to get to if they figure out something during the process. Step two, after they've gotten some of that information, let's say it's at the end of their shift, for instance, now they need to hand off that incident to the next team. So Krista can help ensuring that team two knows what's coming, what's happening, why is this incident open, what data has been discovered. Step three, now that team two has the ball, they're trying to go with what team one was already doing. They're figuring out what's the full scope, what happened, how did this incident get started, where did it come from, what's going on with the data, has there been exfiltration of data, somebody stolen data. Team two is going to have that. Now they're going to more potentially enriched data, and they're figuring out, well, okay, what do I need to do to fix it? Let's say we've determined what the cause is, what the problem is. A few hours later, now we're trying to figure out what do we do to fix it. So now they're doing remediation efforts. They've, let's say, gotten some of those figured out. Step five, now they're making these decisions, but they need approvals. In some cases, when you have an incident, you can't just arbitrarily block systems or take them offline because they can impact business continuity. So they need to get approvals, and those approvals can take time. And those approvals may be to individuals who aren't even awake, depending on the time zone of where team 2 is. So now they're making decisions, but team 3 is the one that's going to end up owning the final implementation because the approvals won't come in until team 3's shift starts, for instance. And team 3 now is finishing up all of this incident. So there's a whole process here. And normally, if you're just having people communicating with email, chat messages, trying to go through, let's say, a Word document to record all this information, or maybe they have a SOAR platform that's more meant for individual users to try to fill out this, not a team. They're all trying to add to this data to fix the problem. And with Christa, this becomes a much more sequential and simplistic type of operation. So that's an example where you look at the full breadth of multiple teams getting involved, but we really want to give you a tangible feel of the experience. So the example we're going to go through is actually going to show you what does it look like if an analyst was, for instance, performing some of these steps, performing the steps of investigation. So let's say a new alert comes in. So this is typical. We get something triggered. Potentially it's a bad alert. There's something happening. The analyst will get presented with, hey, here's the alert information. How would you like to handle? Now, they would get additionally context. So they may get virus information, which we'll show you in the live demo. They may get information coming from other systems like log data. We didn't show that in this particular view just because of brevity. But in this case, they're using that data to make a decision, and they determine if it is an incident. They do say, yes, this is an incident. Christa can automatically open an incident report in whatever system of record they choose. So Christa does that based upon the analyst choosing. Now they decide they need some more information to be able to store with the incident record. So this means security has to request information potentially from IT. Security may not have access to all the systems. In many enterprise environments, there can be thousands and thousands of systems. That means that not every system is going to be immediately accessible. So now they ask for it. So this request goes to IT. The analyst here is actually asking for Matthew Smith's information for what the access level was that they had. Now IT is going to get that request, and Christa is brokering this discussion between IT and security. So the analyst gets to choose, how long do you want to give IT to respond? Christa can actually define response options and rules based upon the number and the amount of time passed when Christa asks someone for something. So one of the key use cases that often gets missed when thinking about systems where you may have, let's say, security cases, they want to integrate with all of the internal systems. They don't consider that in many cases, humans don't operate as fast as machines, but you still need to follow up with the humans and make sure that they get the time back, the information back in the time allotted. So in this case, the security analyst has given IT 1 hour, because this is a very important incident, to give their information back. And if they don't, Christa will escalate automatically. So Christa is orchestrating, providing decisions. And even in some cases, for instance, you may say, hey, Christa can decide how long they should give. And I don't even want the analyst, but in this case, the analyst is making that choice. So now the request goes to IT. They get that request from Christa. Christa's then, they're all in the same system. Christa's then taking that information directly from IT and providing it back to the security analyst and keeping it all within the chain of history of the incident. So in this case, IT gets the necessary audit data, gives it back to the security analyst so that they can take a look, since they didn't have, let's say, access to the system in question. So that's an overview of how a brokered interaction could go and an analyst could work. Let's see it in action. So we're going to actually do a live demo. All right, so I'm going to be playing the role of an analyst here in the screen. You're seeing our client. This is where end users work with Christa, and it's just like any chat client that you might already be familiar with. And in this case, an alert typically would come as an inbound, meaning an alert would come from, let's say, an external system, but we're going to just simulate that case. So we're going to go through and just launch this conversation. And we're going to look for some alerts. And we have a critical alert here that we're going to launch with. So this conversation just got launched. And normally your SIM might trigger this conversation, for instance, by the way, putting that data to Krista, and those systems externally can trigger Krista to launch conversations. So here's some details of the alert. I'm the analyst. I'm looking at it. I'm evaluating. I get immediate tools to be able to look up information. So in this case, for instance, I could go get the virus total data. Krista could automatically bring some of that information to me. Let me just take a look though at the virus total report for this particular malware. It looks pretty bad. A lot of security vendors have flagged this file as malicious, the one that was detected by the alert. That's not a good thing. We might want to also find out more information on who's the user of the asset that's affected. So maybe this is a laptop. Okay, looks like we have record of 2 users having this asset prior. Let's see more information about the users. Krista can go to your HR or your directory system, pull information about the user, give more information potentially pertinent, like which department or what their employee information is if they need to be contacted. So just based on, and I could get firewall information, I could also get system log information, but based on just those 2 data points, that seems like it's a pretty bad potentially incident that I need to start an incident response for. So now I'm the security user, I can go ahead and start and create that incident. Now there's one thing to keep in mind. In this demo, I've created these as possible ways that we've integrated with systems externally from Krista that you can use Krista, but anyone who has the ability to basically go in and work with an interface like Krista can actually modify these options very easily to add additional options for the response. So maybe there's specific systems that I need to get information from that are in a company environment. Those would just appear as extra options right here. This is editable. It's fully editable. The whole process is editable. But let's keep going with this. I'm going to create an incident now. Okay, so Krista now has launched an incident and said, okay, I've recorded this incident. And this could be, for instance, in ServiceNow as a system of record, other companies, depending upon your particular systems in-house, may use other systems of record. But in this case, we're just making sure that we're keeping track of all the incident information, let's say in one central ticketing system. I can send a message directly to the asset user. So who the person was, the Aiden Shields person, right? I can have some canned messages. I can provide the security analyst with like, hey, you can give these folks some immediate information and you can also give them more information. It's quite bad. Please refrain from using any corporate machines until we've figured out where it's at. So the IT analyst or security analyst, excuse me, can have immediate connection with the affected user. Krista will confirm, okay, I've given this information to the user. Krista can use email, Krista can use SMS or directly message users on the Krista platform, or all 3 if potentially needed to get the information to that user. And I can also now request information from IT. So maybe I need more information about this particular individual. And in this case, I can say, please tell me everything about Aiden Shields. Now, I just sent this. This is Krista now giving me the options for how long do I want to give IT to respond. Let's choose a 1 hour time frame. This is a high priority incident. I'm going to switch over to another user, and I have this user in another window, another browser window, so that I can have 2 separate accounts at the same time. In this case, now I'm acting as the IT user, and I'm getting this request from IT, or from security, excuse me, as IT, tell me everything about Aiden Shields. So in this case, we also have this little time ticker clicking because it's going down to 1 hour. I've been given 1 hour, or this is going to escalate to my boss or potentially my boss's boss to get me to make sure that I answer this. And this could go to multiple people in IT. The first one to respond, for instance, would be the one that might have the information given. So because this is a demo, I'm just going to put some generic information, and that information is going to go right back to IT. or excuse me, to security, so that it's easy to demonstrate. But that could be file information, that could be other details. It's all up to the process of how you want to implement this, and it's easily editable within our Christa Studio. So now I've just done a bunch of actions, and all these different systems and different people are all in the same conversation. They're all getting communicated together in one place. The data is being brought into one place. Even remediation is getting brought to one place. So now I've figured out, okay, I've got information needed for the incident. I can go ahead and just block this system from the network as the immediate step, and then maybe I'll do some additional messaging to the user or go back to IT and request more information. So all of that can get done, and now I can just say, all right, I'm done with this particular incident. I can maybe go back to it ever if I need to. I can run many conversations in Christa. So these aren't the only conversations that are available, right? I can go to open incidents. I can investigate more information. I can open more incidents if I need to. All of that's available as conversations that we've provided that Christa can immediately launch. But in this case, this completes our demonstration as what the interaction pattern is for a security analyst going to getting information about IT. So we're going to stop here and open it up for any questions that you might have.
Super, Josh. You kind of went through the workflow there, and it seemed pretty similar to other security orchestration tools. What's the difference between Christa and a SOAR platform?
So in a SOAR platform, you essentially end up having large workflows, playbooks, as they call them, but there's a lot of script maintenance. There's a lot of coding necessary to maintain those, because they're really focused on being able to just integrate with some of the systems in your environments, mostly the security systems. The other problem with SOAR is they're not team oriented, meaning in terms of allowing for lots of different team members to get handoffs and coordinations, they're still stuck going to a single UI. And if you don't have connections with some of those systems, you're ending up having to code and script for getting things done. That just adds more burden. So in the end, it's becoming a fancy tool for being able to store some incident information. Christa is different because Christa is focused on collaboration and coordination from the get-go, wasn't focused on security alone, which provides you with the ability to get a lot of the things that those SOAR tools you have to kind of bend to your will or script to your will out of the box. And Christa was also built to manage lots of users, not just security users. So with other users inside of the company on the Christa platform, it becomes much easier to coordinate outside of the security team themselves.
So I can summarize that in just to add to that, Scott, real quick.
Sure, go ahead.
If I have to just summarize what a SOAR platform versus Christa would be, number one, SOAR platforms, as Josh correctly pointed out, it requires you to create this complex workflows, or what they call playbooks, utilizing very technical know-about of scripting language or programming language. So your security analysts are nothing but programmers. And if they're not able to code, guess what? It becomes another SDLC project for them to rely on engineering teams to provide those playbooks to them. Second, which is the most important part, and I've built SOAR platforms in the past, and we've made a bunch of money doing that, where they fail predominantly is the maintenance aspect of it, because no application, no technologies is consistent. APIs are changing, the data format is changing, and those playbooks requires so much headache of maintenance after they've been created. And your workflow itself changed. People come and go. You're consistently adding to your process, or you're changing your process, or more teams are getting involved, et cetera. Just maintenance and changing of that is not easy. So that's why if you look at that, SOAR platforms have traditionally now been integrated more into SIM platforms rather than just being a standalone platform. And I've not even gotten into the whole how do you basically install the SOAR platform in your organization. That's not easy, because it requires connectivity to all the internal tools for them to be able to be effective. And that's just not easy. That's not an easy task to do.
Yeah, I think that goes back to what we talked about earlier, Madhav, with you know, the people in the systems where, you know, traditionally we had to force people to understand the systems, but then what you guys were explaining with the scripting and the maintenance, it's, you know, it's difficult to push those out to, you know, the creation to the knowledge workers if they're too hard to use, right? So we're gonna find ourselves in the same situation.
Exactly. And SOAR was never meant to be more effective for the people side of things. They were more like just a force multiplier for the security teams, right? That's all they were ever envisioned for.
Right. Interesting. Well, perfect. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. If anybody has any other questions that maybe you don't want to ask online, or maybe you think of later, you can contact us on our website. There's a really easy contact us form. Just type out your question there. We'll get back with you as soon as we can. And then we'll also provide the recording and the slides to this as soon as I'm able to get them back on the website. But Madhav and Josh, thank you so much for your time. And thanks everybody else for investing time with us. Josh, any closing thoughts, anything that you want to end with today?
It's giving me the last word, huh? No, I would say, you know, the one thing I'll highlight is we didn't build Krista just to be a security tool. And obviously there's a lot of really good security use cases. So beyond just security, and the broader picture I would leave everybody with is, think of Krista as being able to help orchestrate across the business, and security just benefits from it. And that's a key thing, whereas many security tools were just built for a single purpose, and that's not as useful as Krista.
Awesome. Okay, so Josh, since you didn't want to be last, then Madhav will make you last. So close this out. Give us a, you know, what from a security professional, from a CISO perspective, you know, what do we need to be doing to take care of this problem?
I mean, I think, how do you make your existing resources more effective? That is CISO's entire job, and Krista does that beautifully and simply. Simple is the key word here, because security teams or security professionals are already dealing with so much complexity in their environment that they cannot take on more tools, more technology, and have their people train on them only to be very less effective the day it gets delivered, right? So simplicity is the key, and Krista does that beautifully than any other platform that I've ever personally worked on or have delivered, right? And the other key aspect of this entire thing, excuse me, is also having that unified interface across all your systems. And that's what Krista is meant for, right? That single unified interface across your different tools and different platforms and different systems.
Outstanding. I like the simplicity of it. And interestingly enough, it says right here, the future of intelligent automation is here, and it all starts with one simple conversation. Well, thanks, Madhav, and thanks, Josh, and thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, guys.